Welcome back to Open Line here on News Channel 5 Plus. We have a fascinating show tonight talking about H.R. 40, which would set up a commission in Congress to explore whether or not the United States should give out slave reparations to descendants of African-American slaves. I want to go ahead and get to our next caller. It's actually Reverend Enoch Fuzz. He's a very well-known member of our community, a pastor at Corinthian Baptist Church. Reverend Fuzz, go ahead.
Hey. Okay, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Yes, sir.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. My family received some reparations. My grandfather and his brother, and from his brother, that land was taken from him. But I want more specific. Here's a specific question. How much would reparations cost? Dollars and cents. How much would it cost? I've heard it suggested that you give the 101 HBCUs $1 billion apiece. I'm not saying one way or the other. And then secondly, which is really important to me, what about women in America? They've been treated so poorly. Poor women have been really trounced on. What about doing something for women in America? And then don't answer my question about how much dollars and cents will it cost to do so-called reparations? That's my question.
Thank you so much, Reverend Fuzz. Good to hear from you. Charlane, do you want to start with the cost factor?
Yeah, I was trying to find the scholar who has done this study. There's a scholar, and I wish I remember his name. I heard him on a podcast. Say it again.
Coates.
I don't think, no, it's, I forget his name, but it's not him. He did a study basically that calculated would have been about the true cost of reparations. Some say it's about $10 to $13 trillion. It's actually going to be more than that. When you calculate on interest, each slave in America that has passed through this country, the hours worked and times the number of years plus their descendants, it would essentially bankrupt America. There's not a dollar amount that could truly pay back what we are worth and owed, because again, and that's the real conversation we don't really want to have, right, in America and on a national stage, is that the money owed to us would be significant enough to put us in a position that would make us probably the most powerful demographic in America. That's the truth that we don't want to talk about, that we would bankrupt the federal government if they actually paid us out in reparations.
So with that in mind, kind of the natural follow-up would be, what is enough to make a difference but not cause more harm than good, do you think?
Well, I think we need to think about how reparations, because again, we're thinking a lot. When we talk about reparations, it's often talked about in a direct payment standpoint, but I think we need to sort of expand our thinking on how reparations could be creatively delivered. Again, Tequila talked about the COVID relief bill that was just passed 2 days ago and how it came in a package. And I think it has to come in a package, not only on the federal level, but the local level as well, to different institutions. I often say the psychological and mental harm that was done as a result of slavery is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And that's something that money can't buy, is our mental sanity, that we have to deal with the pandemic of racism and institutionalized white supremacy every single day that we live here in America. So when we think about that, we need to include a mental and psychological package that addresses the harm that we have to deal with every single day. That's something that money can't buy. So how do we have a reparations package that includes that. How do we address the educational loss of, our enslaved ancestors were not allowed to read or write. So therefore, we were at a disadvantage when it came to education. So how do we pump education into not only our Black HBCUs, but every Black American who wants to go to college? How do we set them up for success and make sure that they go for free? So, it's different. Look at what Evansville, Illinois is doing. They're the first in the country on a local level to put reparations in people's hands. It can be done. It can be done not just from a federal level, but there's ways that we can creatively go about this thing.
Let's go ahead and get to another caller, and I know a lot of you are waiting on the line. We appreciate your patience, but I want to get to Lucy. Let's go ahead and punch you through. Lucy, what is your question for our guest tonight?
Hey there, Chris. How you doing? Nice to see you on TV doing this show.
I appreciate that, Lucy. Thanks for calling in.
And it's really nice to see Miss Tequila. Thank you for ensuring that I have voter rights there, young lady. Why couldn't you have been my great niece? Well, I'm one of those white descendants, y'all, that is descended from great slave traders, not just slave owners, but great slave traders. One of my ancestors would make General Bedford Force compared to the amount of slaves that my family has stolen and sold, and the land that we stole from American Revolutionary soldiers and flipped that land to make a big profit off of. But I came from 3 generations on that side of orphans. And my grandfather, I've got a picture of my grandfather, and he's a tow-headed white boy with bright blue eyes. And his brother kind of looks the opposite of him. Same father, same mother. But that's what my family wouldn't talk about. And I have on another side that we have Black relatives. When it wasn't quite legal to have a wife in the eyes of God and in name, but not by man's law. And then when their father died, the church came in and stole everything for this kingdom. Well, I'm sure you ladies saw the Markle, the Prince Harry and Meghan's interview
Meghan Markle.
The other day. Mm-hmm. Okay, Markle. All right. The royal family is owned. They're nothing but zoo animals. They are owned by the same system that created slavery.
Lucy, I want to keep you on track. We do want to talk about reparations tonight.
I am.
All right.
My point is that is a system that still owns that family. They're tokenistic, and it owns everything on this planet practically, and it has evolved. And if you think, anybody out there for a minute that thinks that Black folks were starving in Africa, then you need to sit down and see Skip Gates' series that he did on the kingdoms in Africa. What they did is the ignorant people there had help from people that had gunpowder, and they rounded up all the people that ran the place and shipped them out. We ought to be grateful for the people here that are Black that built this country. So, here's what I want to see. Everybody talks about a check. Reverend Fuzz has brought up some good points. I really think that at the very least, we owe it to people here that came from slavery to trace their ancestral roots back and give them a document of who they are. And we should pay for that. And let them know who they are, because we even stop them from finding their ancestors. And when you know who you are, you know where you've been, and you're going to be surprised when you find out that your ancestors from Africa were leaders, and they weren't some bush meat-eating idiots running around Africa. They wanted that continent because they knew of all the gold and the jewels and all the civilized society that lived over there that nobody ever hears of. And one last thing. the movie Birth of a Nation is a propaganda of film. It even divided my family from their black relatives about 100 years ago. And if you don't believe it's a propaganda film, there is a Dick Cavett interview with Lillian Gish, and I think it was around 1970. And there was a famous Satchel Paige, I think, was the baseball player on that show.
Lucy, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate your enthusiasm on all that. I don't know if we got a direct question from Lucy, but shared a lot of her thoughts. Tequila, anything you want to say in response, or should we go on to the next caller?
No, I like where Lucy was headed. I was a little nervous at first, but then, I said, okay, Lucy, now we talking.
Very good. Well, we will have more calls like from Lucy's in just a moment, but we've got to fit in another break. You're watching Open Line. We'll be back in a moment.